All right, we are live everywhere. And in just a minute, we're going to be getting into the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking on the show about your ego getting in the way of your training. Just give me one quick moment. Hey, as you tune in, let me know how your week is going for you so far. Let me know if you're an athlete, if you got competitions coming up. Let me know when those competitions are. Let me know if you're struggling with anything leading into those competitions as well, because honestly, it's a very common thing. I don't think we like to talk about it as much as we sometimes need to, but competing in sports at a high level is a difficult thing to do, and sometimes we need help when we're leading into those competitions. So if you've got any struggles, whether those are physical things you're dealing with, mental things you're dealing with, whatever else it might be, drop it in the comments. Let me know where you're at. Let me know what you're working towards and where you're struggling a little bit. Those are always the things I like to talk about on the show, and maybe I can throw an episode together that's going to help you with whatever those issues are. In the meantime, though, if you haven't tuned into this show before, make sure you are checking it out on all the major podcast platforms. That is Spotify, Apple, anywhere else that you find your podcasts, or you can check it out on the website, www.elitedevelopmentpodcast.ca. So after you are done with this episode, make sure to go check it out there, subscribe to the show, leave a review, all of those great things. But let's get into the show. So we are asking a very important question today. Is your ego getting in the way of your training? Now let's get into the show here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today I want to ask you, is your ego getting in the way of your training? So why do I want to talk about this today? Why did I think this was something important that we should get into? So in my experience in the strength and conditioning industry, the time I've spent in this world, I've been here in this world in some way, shape, or form for about 14 years now. And something I see so often is athletes that, again, have these huge goals for their sport. Likely, if you're here right now, you're one of them. You've got these big goals for your sport, but you're not quite willing to back it up with the action that is going to be required. You're not quite willing to back it up with the action that is going to be required. And this comes into play in a lot of different ways. But the one we're going to talk about today is training. Now, when I say you're not quite willing to back it up with the action required, what a lot of people think I mean when I talk about that is that, just simply the hard work, the effort that is going to be required to reach high levels. But today we're going to go at it in a little bit of a different way. One of the most common things I see with successful athletes is they are not worried about how they look in the gym. They're not worried about, being the guy who's always winning the exchanges in the gym. They're not worried about, putting themselves in bad positions, about, training all those skills that they know they're going to need when they come into competition. So many athletes are, so these good athletes, as they spend that time working through these bad positions, as they spend that time, teaching themselves all the different areas that they're going to need, understanding the help that they're going to need to get there, they start to put themselves in better and better positions to succeed long term. So for you, what I want to ask you is your ego getting in the way of how you need to be training? So when I say that, when it comes to your training, when it comes to the time you're spending in the gym, look at where you're spending your time. Not just where you're spending your time, but look at how you're spending your time when you're there. So what I mean when I say this is when you're training and you get the opportunity to go with somebody that's higher level than you, what's your thought? Are you taking that opportunity and are you running with it? Are you taking that opportunity and saying, great, this is somebody that I can learn from. This is somebody that's going to help develop me. This is somebody that's going to help push me to newer, higher, better levels? Or are you looking at that opportunity and going, shit, that's not going to go well for me. I don't do that. Because so many athletes out there say they want to get better, say they want to improve, say they want to do whatever it takes to get as far as they can, But then the opportunity to go with the best guy in the gym comes, and they say, no, I don't want to do that, because they have their reasons, they have their thoughts, they have their ideas of why it won't work for them, or why they shouldn't do it. But they're forgetting these are the opportunities to get better. These are the opportunities to learn. And if you're not taking those opportunities to learn, now you're going to struggle. Right? So for yourself right now, when you have the opportunity to go with somebody that's better than you, when you have the opportunity to train or to spar or to work with someone that is higher level than you are right now, what's the first thought that goes through your head? Are you worried about how it might make you look bad? Or are you thinking, this is a great opportunity, I'm going to take something away from this, and I'm going to be able to apply it to my own career? Now, the same thing comes with outside help. So when I talk about outside help, what I mean is the coaches outside of your sport. So I know a lot of athletes that I've spoken to, even over the past year, they think, I don't need to hire a strength and conditioning coach because I know how to work out. Cool. Or I don't need to hire a nutritionist because, I eat well already. Or I don't need a mental performance coach because, I'm already mentally tough. And they think of these things, and they think that they've got a handle on all of these outside areas of training simply because they're doing okay at it right now. Now, if this is you, and that just triggered a thought in your mind, if this is you and you're thinking, oh shit, he's talking to me, isn't he? Good. Because yes, I am talking to you. If you're sitting here and you're telling me you don't need a strength and conditioning coach because you know how to work out already, or you're telling me you don't need a nutritionist because you eat well already, or you're telling me you don't need a mental performance coach because I don't struggle with mental stuff that much anyway, you're wrong. You might not need it right now. You might not need it to succeed at the level you're at right now, but let me ask you, are you as far as you want to get in your career? If you're here right now, are you at the peak that you want to reach for your career? Is this as far as you want to go, or do you want to reach higher levels? Do you want to get paid? Do you want to get paid more money if you're getting paid already? Do you want to reach the top? Do you want to win championships? Do you want to succeed at the highest level you possibly can? Because if you do, you need coaches in these areas. And so if you do, even if right now you're not consciously thinking that, it's your ego getting in the way and it's your ego telling you that you don't need help in these areas, it is. Because think about what you're saying. I don't need to hire a strength and conditioning coach because I know how to work out. I've spent the last 14 years of my life learning and understanding all the different aspects of how to properly train athletes to compete at the highest possible levels in sport. And you're telling me that in the few years you've been competing, you've learned all the information you need to learn, and there's nothing more you can learn from a coach like me? Or the nutritionist that I send my athlete to help them with their weight cuts. He has been a weight cutting specialist for I don't even know how long. But the man works with athletes around the world. The man works with athletes at the highest levels, people competing in the UFC, people competing for world championships in other organizations. The dude does it all. His name is TJ Whalen. If you don't know who he is, go check him out at Coach TJ on Instagram. But are you sitting here and telling me that in the time you've been competing and the few times you've run your own weight cut, you know everything that he knows and you can get as good of a result as he can get? I don't think so. So again, even if you're not consciously sitting here understanding that it's your ego getting in the way and it's your ego telling you you don't need this outside help, I want this to be the moment for you that you understand that it's your ego getting in the way. It is your ego telling you you don't need outside help. Because the surefire way to make sure you don't achieve your true potential in a sport, the surefire way to make sure you don't reach the levels that you want to reach one day, is to think that you know everything. One of the most common things that I always tell my athletes is I absolutely don't know everything. I was having this conversation with one of my MMA guys yesterday. We've worked together for 3 fights now, 2 fights now for him. And I was looking back the other day at our first fight camp working together, and I was laughing at how stupid I found the program. And that's not to say that there weren't good aspects of that program, but as time went on and as I learned more and as I did more research, read more books, watched more videos, I look back on the program I wrote that day and I don't like it anymore because I've learned, I've developed, I've changed. I'm not sitting here saying I know everything, even though I've been doing this for 14 years. So the same thing for you. If you're sitting here saying, I understand training, so I don't need help with it, you might understand some basics. You might be able to get yourself a couple of results, but are you truly telling me that you want to succeed at the highest level, but you couldn't use help from somebody who's been doing this for longer than you? You couldn't use help from somebody who's been doing this, who has great results working with other athletes? It's goofy. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's goofy. Like, you do not know everything, regardless of how long you've been training. And also, as the athlete, why would you want to have to deal with all of that stuff yourself when you can bring coaches on to help with those areas? The same thing with the nutrition. Oh, I eat well already, so I don't need help with that. Come on. Like, you're telling me you eat well already, so you understand all the intricacies of cutting weight. I won't even pretend to understand that. When I refer athletes over to TJ, I always tell them I work with TJ because I don't even want to pretend to understand the science behind what he does. It's so intricate and so complicated. And if any of the athletes that work with me that also work with him are here right now, drop it in the comments and tell people how that has changed your game for you, and how intricate it actually is, because this guy is an absolute wizard. But these are two of the most common examples in my eyes of how athletes let their ego get in the way for them. They feel like they don't need these outside help in these areas because they feel like they've got a good handle on it themselves. Now, you might have an okay handle on it, but in that case, you've got to keep asking yourself, what levels do you want to get to? You want to be a UFC champion? Are you telling me you think that people reaching the top in the UFC don't have help in these areas? One of the most common examples of this, even that just came to light for me this past weekend with UFC 282. Darren Till, very, very high level UFC athlete, was talking about how he does his weight cuts. And somebody that I've had on this show, Jordan Sullivan, he's a fight nutritionist as well. He works with Israel Adesanya, Kayakara France, all of the guys down from New Zealand, Australia area, was picking apart Darren Till's weight cuts. He was talking about how he just throws a sauna suit on and goes running. And Jordan picked apart his weight cut strategy and basically told him that what he's doing isn't working. And sure enough, Darren Till's competing at middleweight right now, lost his fight, and his opponent came out after and said, Darren's a great fighter, but he shouldn't be at middleweight. He's not big enough. He's not strong enough to compete with this division. So right there, think about it this way. Darren's sitting here thinking, I've got it all figured out. I know how to cut weight. I know how to do these things. But he's lost 5 of his last 6 fights. And he's competing at a weight class that is heavier than what he used to when he was truly successful. And he's being told by his opponents that he's not strong enough to compete. So do you think it makes more sense for him to keep doing what he's doing in the weight class where he's currently sitting 1-4 or 1-3 maybe? I don't remember the exact numbers. Or would it make sense for him to put the ego aside, ask for help from someone who knows what they're doing, to get him back down to 170 pounds, where he was, I believe, 17-2. Between the two, I would confidently say being able to put the ego aside and being able to hire on the help to help him do it properly and put him in the weight class where he probably belongs is going to be the answer. And again, I'm not saying that this man is consciously saying, I know everything and there's no way that I would ever need outside help. But instead of going out of his way to humble himself and go get that outside help, he's trying to do it himself. And as a result, he's not having the results that he's looking for in the sport. So I hope this has been enlightening for you. I hope that you're starting to realize that there are areas that you're training right now, or areas that you're working on right now that you need more help with. And the big thing I want to really reinforce from this episode is that's not a bad thing. People for some reason think that's a bad thing to reach out and ask for help. People for some reason think that it's a bad thing to go to outside experts, to work with somebody to help with their training, work with somebody to help with their weight cuts, with whatever else it is they're doing. And it's just not. It's just smart. It's smart to bring on the outside people. It's smart to develop your game and develop your team at the highest possible level early so that you have those things in place when you start reaching higher levels. Because if you have those things in place when you start reaching higher levels, you have your strength coach, you have your nutritionist, you have a mental performance coach, you have someone in place in all these areas to help you. What starts to happen is you start to succeed faster, and you start to succeed at a faster rate, and in turn you reach higher levels faster, and you're able to make more out of your career. Because in the end, the goal for any athlete that is coming up right now that has big goals in their sport, that wants to reach the UFC, that wants to win world titles, that wants to be financially free from their sport, the goal for any of them is to reach those higher levels in a state where they can stay there for a long time. Because if they can stay there for a long time, they can make the most amount of money that they can. They can reach the highest levels that they can. They can not only reach a championship, but stay at that championship. And if that is your goal, if you're coming in right now and that is what you're focused on trying to achieve, the number one thing you can do is set your ego aside and ask for the help that you need. If you're sitting here right now and you're asking, how do I recognize if something is ego-driven or if I truly just do have the right answer? Ask yourself, whatever it is, whether you're talking about training, nutrition, any of your skill set that you're working on, ask yourself, is there someone who can help me improve this more? Is there someone who might know more than me? Because regardless of what your method is, regardless of where you're at in your career, the only way to guarantee that you're not going to achieve the goals you have set for yourself is if you feel like you have all the answers right now. Like I mentioned, I've been coaching for a long time. I'm never going to sit here and say I have all the answers. I'm confident in my methods. I'm confident that any athlete that comes forward and starts working with me is going to get good results. But I'm never going to sit here and say I know everything. I'm never going to sit here and try to pretend that if you work with me, magically everything's just going to be perfect right away. And any coach that tells you that is lying, because this is ever evolving. We're always learning more. We're always developing more. And that is the kind of coach that you need. But as an athlete for yourself, the same thing. If you're sitting here and you're saying, I have all the answers, I know how to train, I know how to eat, I know how to cut weight, I know how to do this, do that. Right away, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, because you might have some ideas, you might understand the basics on how to do it, but there are going to be people out there that can teach you more. And if you can learn more, you can improve your methods. And if you can improve your methods, you're going to succeed at a higher level, and you're going to succeed for longer. So put the ego aside, ask for the help that you need if your goals are truly important to you. Now, that is it. That is all. I appreciate you all taking the time to tune in. Like I mentioned before the broadcast, if you have not checked out this podcast before, make sure to go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you find your podcasts, and check out the Elite Development Podcast. Or you can find it on the website, www.elitedevelopmentpodcast.ca. And finally, my one ask of you, if you have tuned into the show, if you got some value from the episode today, share this show with a teammate, share this show with a friend, share this show with somebody who needs to hear the message. So again, thank you. I appreciate you for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon.